Zuko's a bad example when trying to figure out how to write redemption arc, and I will die on that hill. Hey, Crowlee here. And No. What are you doing? Don't leave an angry comment yet. There will be plenty of time for that later. I swear I have a point. Just give me some time. Redemption arcs are such a popular trope nowadays that it's actually more surprising to see a story finish without having had one. Naturally, there's 1.5 million videos and articles trying to dissect why and how they work. And I'm here to tell you every single one of them is wrong. Okay, maybe not every single one of them. I don't know, I haven't watched everything ever. Leave me alone. Anyway, I watched a video on redemption arcs the other day that mentioned Zuko and Darth Vader as points of comparison, as all of them usually do. But rather than absorb the same Zuko good, Darth Vader bad spiel I hear every single time this discussion is brought up, I couldn't stop feeling as if there was something wrong about that comparison. A fundamental mismatch, so detached from their writing quality that I couldn't completely shake it off as unimportant. Like they were treating two completely different kinds of story moments as if they were the same thing. Darth Vader did not have a bad redemption arc. He didn't have a redemption arc at all. He had neither a redemption nor an arc. And neither did most, if not all, of the characters that had similar deaths. And two, what the character did doesn't actually matter. Not when it comes to audience perception, anyway. As usual, I'll be going on and on about these points in the order I mentioned them for like half an hour. So seriously hold your horses and at least pretend to hear me out. The first sentence wasn't clickbait, but it also wasn't as clear-cut as you might think it was. My first point is simultaneously the least controversial, yet the hardest to properly explain for me. So I'll introduce it here and go back to it later. What I need to make unmistakably clear is that there's a very clear line to be drawn. Darth Vader did not have a redemption arc, like, at all. He had a subversion of his suspected morality. A moment of clarity, if you will. You might accuse me of being semantic, but I truly think the distinction to be important, because the goal of pulling a Vader is fundamentally different from the goal of a redemption from a narrative design standpoint, to the point that discussing them in the same breath is counterproductive at best and bad-fated at worst. It's like comparing my grandma to a bicycle. Sure, if she had wheels, we could discuss it, but currently these are different objects. You always see people talking about how good redemption arcs are ones where the characters have equivalent work for the suffering they've caused. But that's genuinely never the case if you look at audience perception. Jax from the Amazing Digital Circus cannot be redeemed, and he is just an asshole. Hordak from She-Ra is overwhelmingly more accepted as redeemed than Catra ever was. Yet he did almost no work for it and has been a war criminal for at the very least 40 years. Scorpia was about just as involved in the war as Catra was, but you don't see anyone claiming she even needed a redemption arc at all. So what actually matters? Does anything matter? Why does the consensus on so many of these characters seem so illogical at first glance? Is it double standards? Maybe a little? But more than that, I think the line the audience draws for these characters simply isn't a moral one. It's a familiarity one. The idea that your viewer will not see your story objectively, or even in the way you intended, is one every writer needs to quell at some point or another. Humans don't usually write essays about characters and then decide that they're well written. They feel for them, and then just build a justification for that. To make a convoluted argument simpler, the overwhelming majority of watchers have never had to deal with a war criminal, cult leader, space Nazi? I don't know what Hordak's title is, but they have had to deal with a bully. There's a saying that comes to mind every single time I see people in these fandoms complain about double standards, and I look under the hood and it's yet another case of self-pitying asshole versus self-righteous nice one. An annoying character will always be judged more harshly than an evil one, because the war crimes are fictional, but my annoyance isn't. The same goes for judging morality. Honestly, one's more willing to forgive and forget Hordak's many crimes because they seem impersonal to us. He was responsible for probably many deaths, yet we don't see any of them. He's not even particularly mean to the people he actually has relationships with, unlike other people. And the same goes for Scorpia. I could go on a whole rant about her and how people give her too much slack, but there's a better video on that already. I'll leave the link somewhere. As always, permission to duel me. If I forget, we'll shoot at noon. And this is where I drop the Zuko bomb. I don't think he's a good example for redemption arcs. Note that I said for and not off. Great character arc, not a good example in an academic sense. If you're watching this, and you are, you've probably seen the wave of redemption arcs that have followed Zuko's footsteps. And you'll probably agree, most of them range from forgettable to pretty bad, even when the characters they involved are anything but. So what's up with that? Was Zuko's arc just a once-in-a-lifetime lightning in a bottle of incredible writing? It might be a little controversial to say this, but I don't think so. This isn't a Hunger Games situation where 100 YA novels came after, completely missing the point. Here the cases I would actually agree compare well to Zuko, actually follow the steps one by one, yet still fail, because it's easy to redeem a character in Zuko's position. He's in the perfect situation for an audience to want to forgive. He's a teenager working to impress a man that truly does not care about him. He was physically abused in a way that you can visibly see in every scene he's in. His main mistake was caring about his people. He was never framed as a true threat in the way Azula or other antagonists were. Zuko and Katra's arcs are constantly being compared, yet he's in a position where more similar to Hordax. Yes, he does bad things, but it's consistently shown that he does them either out of a misguided love for the nation that rejected him, or for the single-minded objective of rejoining it. You pity him, because you know he was doomed to fail from the very start. You see yourself in him, in the need to impress a parental figure that truly does not care for you. You're more or just as likely to see yourself in the people Jax and Catra mistreat than you are in seeing yourself in them, especially in Jax's case. Back on this, to have an arc you need to change, and to be redeemed your memory needs to survive. I'd already questioned the validity of being forgiven in death, but the truth of the matter is that most of these characters are literally never mentioned again in their media, or even more so, are explicitly framed as bad people by those who knew them. Shadow Weaver, Darth Vader, Gabriel Crest, none of them had arcs. An arc requires several instances of reaffirming a character's beliefs and or denying them. That's why it's called an arc. Some of them didn't even change in their final moments. Shadow Weaver stayed a good 70% of the show on the good guy TM party, yet she was terrible at every single scene she had. Her last words aren't explicit, "You should be thanking me for this." It's easy to forget that the planet would have quite literally exploded if Adora hadn't succeeded. And even then, this bitch had no way of knowing it would succeed to the degree it did. She was literally getting drunk a couple scenes before it. Gabriel Crest is an important example. Probably the clearest example, actually, because the next season after his sacrifice, most of the world thinks of him as a hero, except those who knew him. Those who knew his secret identity are either trying to save their own asses from prison, or freaking out because they need to keep it hidden to protect those they care about. Adrian himself falls into the thinks he was a hero camp, yet still has only bad words when he talks about him. So does everyone on their family. He's also the only one of these characters I know of where their piece of media actually continues after their sacrifice, and is also interested on dealing with the fallout. He's unequivocally painted to most characters as way better than he actually was. Not a villain, but a hero who died to take down Monarch. Yet they all still profoundly dislike him. His new public image is, in the most literal possible sense, painted as a lie. Redemption isn't just about doing one good thing before dying. It's about whether the story itself starts treating you differently afterwards. Even then, recontextualization doesn't necessarily include redemption. I could go on a whole rant about characters like Kyuubi from Madoka Magica, and the whole "he sucks but he's right" archetype. Opening that can of worms would irreparably derail this script though. TLDR, understanding someone differently doesn't automatically mean that the story forgives them, even if it does in most cases. Speaking of which, the only character under the pulling a Vader trope I agree was redeemed, even if badly, is Severus Snape. He sits at an awkward spot between my definitions of pulling a Vader and a redemptioner, and fails at both in the process. He totally does pull a Vader, but the story expects you to think of him as redeemed by retroactively telling you about his pain and efforts. Regardless of how well that worked on you, the characters indisputably forgive him. And that's why I don't think the other examples of this trope are actually redemption arcs. Every other story I've listed here doesn't do that at all. These characters could never have been redeemed because they were never going to survive their stories. Again, the goal of pulling a Vader is fundamentally different from a writing standpoint than the one of a redemption arc. These people's stories were always going to end in death. There was no other option from a narrative perspective. You can't have them be alive and it be a good resolution. If Vader didn't die by his own hand, someone else would have had to kill him. The interesting part isn't, oh my god, they're good now. It's instead of dying at the hero's hands, they died by their own, because they thought it worth it. Anyway, that's mostly it for today. I hope this made any amount of sense to anyone but me. I tried to rant about this with Ossie, but we got sidetracked because I said the whole nephew, you are conflicted because of your blood, your grandparents thing was stupid, and he couldn't let any Avatar slander go by. So, as always, take with a grain of salt. What do you think? Any agreements, disagreements? Remember to be nice, children. I don't read comments calling me mean words. They make me sad. Overall, I believe most of the advice I've seen online about redemption arcs to be truly unhelpful. Zuko's arc could have only worked in a situation as specific as Zuko's, the audience being so overwhelmingly predisposed to accept it now. Most of the other arcs I mentioned are generally pretty successful writing. Not every single person might be in agreement, but considering the situation and the baseline those characters started at, I think the amount that do are more than enough. Most characters people want to redeem aren't like Zuko. They've done bad things. Things that are, well, maybe not real life worse than Zuko's, worse from an audience POV. It's a balancing act that I'm not sure how I'd handle. And I'm not even sure if I'll try in the near future. Also, I swear I'm making a video on the series that I mentioned last video. I just can't seem to find the right words for it, and this topic made more intuitive sense to me. Okay, bye.